So I think I read a post somewhere once where you were talking about something you learned from the New York Review of Books. And when I look at this cover, I feel like there's a little bit of an allusion to the New York Review of Books. I'm curious. I want to start by asking you, what did you learn from the New York Review of Books? What are some of the kind of ideas that influenced you in the construction of the Mars Review of Books?
Yeah, a lot of it influenced. I consider it an homage. I would read old copies of the New York Review of Books endlessly when I was in college, just using JSTOR or whatever. I could pass a whole day that way. If I found out about a new author, who is this whatever obscure Robbe-Grillet or whatever, I would go straight to the New York Review of Books to get what I knew would be a solid, elegantly written opinion about that. What really inspires me about the early New York Review of Books is that they were kind of fed up with what book reviewing was like at the time. As I mentioned in my little opening salvo to the Mars Review of Books, soon before the founding of the New York Review, Elizabeth Hardwick wrote a piece in Harper's that was, you could say, a takedown of the New York Times book review. This came out in the late 50s. It was just saying, this is all pablum. It's all, weak back padding. Are we not more serious than this? Are we not more intellectual than this? And so the New York Review had an opportunity when there was a printer's strike and the New York Times Book Review stopped printing, and Bob Silvers and Robert Lowell and Elizabeth Hardwick and Jason and Barbara Epstein were all sitting together having dinner, and they said, let's do a new book review and let's do it independent. And we'll only review books that we think are worth reviewing. We're not going to do it for the sake of taking anyone down. We're not going to do it for the sake of building anybody up. We're going to get the best people to talk about the things that are most important. And that was an opportunity then. I think that's an opportunity now for a lot of different reasons.
Interesting. And what do you think made the New York Review of Books go downhill?
Well, did I say it went downhill?
Well, you were talking about it emphatically in the past tense.
I think a lot of publications changed significantly with the advent of the internet. Mm-hmm. They felt they had to create websites, obviously.
Right.
And then they didn't really know how to integrate their websites into their print publications. So oftentimes what people would do would be to print more content on the website than they do in the print publication. Well, if you're publishing twice as much stuff, but you have the same staff, is it all going to be as good? Now you're publishing all this stuff online, and now there's a Twitter mob who really hates this thing that you just published. How are you going to respond to that? Who's making that decision? Is it the old-time editor, or is it like the social media manager? Now, if you feel you always have to respond to the Twitter mob, who's really running the editorial policy of the magazine? Is it the editor or is it Twitter?
Right. I think I wrote in the Other Life newsletter just a few weeks ago, actually, I looked at some of the stats. I don't know, did you see those circulated?
I did, about the average age.
It's pretty insane, right?
Yeah.
I have nothing but respect for, very sophisticated outlets like the New York Review of Books.
Yeah.
And I'm not throwing shade, but clearly they're not keeping up with the times.
Yeah.
to your point, I think.
I don't think it's telling tales out of school to say that the New York Review of Books was a Bob Silvers and Barbara Epstein joint, and then Barbara died, and then Bob died.
Right. So, right, when there's too much influence from individuals, then it's hard to find a successor that can really keep that going.
Could be. But one thing is, the early New York Review was special because it had... I was talking to somebody who worked with Bob, and they were telling me, he really considered it an expression obliquely of his personality. And it had a personality.
Right.
And I don't know how, I think it's hard to find publications like that.
And that often makes great content, but it also makes it hard to find successors and to build something that can last longer than the lifetime of that person, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, a lot of magazines, I would say few magazines have weathered that, yeah.
Right. I should have said, because I mentioned it, but I didn't give the details that the average age for the New York Review of Books right now is something like 75 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like really, really up there. Literally boomer tier.
Have you ever
content.
read the New York Review of Books personals? They're great.
No, why? What is it?
I need to do Mars.
It's like people in retirement homes looking for like a casual sex.
No, it's more beautiful and poignant. Than
Oh, really?
that.
It's like poetic, sophisticated love letters.
80-year-old Proust lover enjoys long walks.
That's nice.
Terrace in Milan, seeking.
I don't know. That sounds pretty horny to me, though. Honestly, I think I was right.
Yeah, that too. I mean,
okay, so
it is a personal ad.
So, tell me more about the kind of guiding vision behind the Mars Review of Books. Clearly, you're building it on Urbit, so the entire kind of content economics is totally different. The game is totally different, basically. Or I should say, not totally different, but Urbit presents some very interesting new avenues to think about when it comes to how content is distributed, how content is monetized.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of really pick your brain and understand how you're thinking about what it means to build a publication on Urbit, because I get a lot of emails from people who are interested in Urbit, and one of the most common things people say is they're interested in writing on Urbit. They're interested in, a lot of people see it as this new way to develop culture and to publish your work, whether it's writing or music or whatever. This is becoming the imagination, even though, people don't even know like what you can do with Urbit. People are like super confused. I get emails from people who don't even know that much, but they're like, how do I start, creating on Urbit? So, you've thought about this as much as anyone really. So I want to kind of talk about this a little bit. What does it mean to build a magazine on Urbit?
Yeah, I was writing a piece that ended up going on the urbit.org blog called Urbit is for Creators. And I was talking to smart people about this question, and they were giving me ideas. And so I got to sort of cobble together an answer to this, and then had an opportunity to write it and be like, oh, okay, why don't I try to do it? I think the thing I think about most is that old 1,000 true fans model, which I'm sure, you're familiar with.
Sure, that was Kevin Kelly, right?
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I think Urbit can do is just provide a space that I own, right? As a small business owner, that isn't going to be degraded by Facebook's decisions. It's not going to be degraded by Twitter's decisions. It's going to be something flexible and extensible to the degree that I want it to be. And I can try to build a business not by getting, 1 billion shallow eyes, but by getting 2,000 deep eyes.
And that, by the way, is one of the reasons why a lot of a certain type of media company has failed in recent years.
Yeah.
Because a lot of media companies were built on Facebook advertising or certain advertising models that then they just yank it, or the economics change and it becomes more expensive to pay for those eyeballs, and those businesses go like down the tubes.
I feel like Facebook advertising was always a sham. I used to work in publishing, and I would do those Facebook ads.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
But there were a lot of businesses built on those ads, which were highly effective for a while, cheap for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, entire
like BuzzFeed.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I haven't.
Is BuzzFeed? No, BuzzFeed is still around.
I'm sure they're still around, but I doubt. I mean, I don't know their numbers, but I doubt that they must be on the decline to some degree.
I saw a recent article from them, and I was surprised to learn they were extant.
And then there's like a long tail of crappier BuzzFeeds.
Yeah.
There were thousands of BuzzFeed type magazines and publications.
Think Doing.
Yeah, exactly. No, but there were like thousands of those that I think were profitable for a while.
Yeah.
And then Facebook yanks the advertising advantages, and they're out of business. So that's the first point that makes publishing on Urbit different.
Yeah.
You own your content with a certain degree of kind of untouchable sovereignty.
Yeah.
That is really unparalleled anywhere else you might want to publish something. So that's one.
Yeah.
What else?
Another one, well, as you and probably a lot of people watching know, an Urbit ID is a permanent identity. So there's opportunities for community building that don't exist on the normie web. I'm not sure I know exactly what those are yet.
Right, it's still shaking out exactly.
But just the idea that this, like, I can build this thing for permanence, the people who will be around, it'll be like, it'll be the same identities. Something about that just feels different from using existing infrastructure where, you don't know who's going to be around tomorrow. You don't know who the people are who are engaging with your work. I think, if you have that 1,000 true fans model, it's a place to build a community where, like, it starts being something more than just purely a magazine that people read, but it can be, something more than that. I'm not going to use the DAO word, but like,
yeah,
there's something, it can be its own little slice of life.
So what made you have the idea that you could do something like this and pull it off and make it work and make it succeed? Like what was the flash of insight where you're like, I could do this? Because I mean, I this stuff takes so much work, like making a beautiful print magazine, selling it on a regular basis. It's a massive venture that I have a lot of respect for. So it takes a certain amount of conviction, a certain amount of like, I really want to do this. I really see an opportunity to do something like this. So I'd love to learn more about that context and like how you think about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever did have that flash of insight.
You just got pumped on it. And you're like, I'm going to do it.
No, I mean, well, I had, I mentioned the idea to different people who were supportive. Shout out to Nick at Swan, who supported this idea in its infancy. And, I don't know, people just seemed to think it could exist. And my underlying thesis was always that there was some way to combine the best of Urbit world and people I knew through that world with the best from, you could say, New York publishing world, and to smash those two things together.
Okay, so tell me more about that and paint the picture here, because I mean, I just rocked up to New York today. I just got off the plane. The people that you know here, the people that are outside of this room in this house tonight, like, help the audience understand, like, what is the context really? Like, so I noticed like all these people have Urbit IDs. Yeah. But, like, how much of that were they already on Urbit? Did you like, kind of strong arm them into it? Like, tell us about the
I have pretty strong arms. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us.
Yeah, I strong armed a couple.
So tell us about how that works and like how is Urbit being perceived by these circles and how is that unfolding and what's going on with that?
I don't know. I just heard that Urbit has clout, like from a non-tech person, like Urbit has clout.
Someone told you that?
Yeah. I was like, wow, I didn't know that. I don't know. I think it's perceived differently. I was just talking to Agnes upstairs. I was like, I don't know where anybody's coming from these days, Right. Like, I don't know what anybody's preconceptions are.
You really just have no clue?
I mean, I guess I'm exaggerating a little, but I mean, no, like, definitely people have different ideas around what Urbit is now that I can't necessarily guess. Like, somebody tweeted Urbit is for autistic hipsters. I think that idea is taking hold a little bit. Maybe New York Week is helping that,
Interesting. Aren't autistic and hipster kind of antonyms though?
No, I don't think so. I think there are lots of autistic hipsters.
Okay. But autism is kind of the opposite of cool, and hipster is cool.
No, I think autism is cool now.
In a way, autism is, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But that's a weird kind of horseshoe going on there because, classical cool is like nonchalant, right? It's relaxed, I don't care, and it's socially fluid, right? Yeah. And autism is kind of literally the opposite of all of those things, right? But I see your point. Of course, it is, in a way, autism is cool, probably because of tech founders are rich and high status now, so that maybe was part of the reason why like autism came into high status.
What about like Michael Burry? Like because he's like the hipster of finance. He's like, oh,
I've never heard anyone say that. I've never thought about that.
It's like, oh, you guys all think this about subprime,
Fast. That's like,
I think
Yeah.
otherwise, and I'm not going to wear shoes.
That's a
know?
That's an interesting horseshoe there. That's a whole other podcast. So, but tell me more about like what are your circles here? Like what is the sociology in which the Mars Review of Books is emerging here in New York?
Yeah, just very organically. I mean,
Like, how do you know these people? Like the Christian Lorenzens,
yeah,
and the
I
Forever
know.
Magazine people, like whatever.
Well, I know Christian from my time in book publishing. I worked for a publishing house.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, here in New York. And
Like one of the big five or whatever?
no, not one of the big five. Small independent
Right on.
press that was distributed by the big five.
Okay.
But so like you find it in bookstores and stuff.
Right.
And we republished the early novels of the great Gary Indiana, who's one of the great living novelists today. And at the time, we reached out to Christian to do the intro for one of the books we were republishing. Mm-hmm. So so I just know Christian from Publishing World, and then Christian introduced me to Matt.
Okay, so you're coming from the establishment.
Yeah,
Publishing world.
It didn't feel like that,
How did you get hooked into Urbit anyway in the first place?
very randomly. Like I'm not sure how many names to be using.
Use them.
but
Names
use
are
them
names are good for content.
for content.
Yeah, you know why? Because I'm friends hear their friends' names mentioned, then they share with their friends.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I'm becoming a gossip podcast,
All right,
honestly.
I'll trust you on that.
Later, yeah.
No, I met this guy Morgan, and he told me about Urbit
Yeah.
just at a party.
And you just looked into it, and you're like, I fuck with this.
No, but
No, you looked into it, you're like, this is
What-
retarded.
what happened was that I told him I was writing a novel, and he was really interested, and like I was surprised that somebody who worked for a tech company was really interested. So I was like, oh, maybe there's like some different vibe here, and I was just like very like flattered.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you like were more interested in
Yeah,
what he was talking
interested.
about.
I was like,
Yeah.
let me figure. So it was like, what is this thing?
Yeah, that is-
But then,
yeah.
as with a lot of people, like I took a bit of a dive, but I bounced off a little bit.
Right.
And then, like a year later, I had left my job, and I had more time on my hands. And I
Right.
took a deeper dive,
Right.
and I was like, okay. And in between, then I'd gone to like a Urbit meetup, and met Galen and Eric at Swan, and thought they were very cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, I'm in this club now.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, I should figure out what is going on with this thing. Like,
Right.
can I get involved at all? Like, what, it just,
Right.
I don't know. I'm drawn to anything like eccentric.
Well, to me, this is actually one of the greatest selling points of Urbit that people still don't appreciate, which is that it's a protocol. It is a software protocol.
Yeah.
And it is also a DAO that creators can plug into.
Yeah.
Like the people still just don't get this. It's going to take a little while, I think, before people can realize it. But, like right now, when you look at the larger landscape of Web3 and the various DAOs that are operating, you have multi-billion-dollar software protocols like Uniswap or Aave or whatever the case might be. There's many of them, right? And these are permissionless, open, like software machines that if you can, interpret the code and make a meaningful pull request on the GitHub repo, you can like start getting paid working for these big software protocols like tomorrow if you have the skills and you can add value. It's like this really open permissionless thing, and people are making mad money working in this highly distributed, decentralized, permissionless way. But currently there's no real way for writers or thinkers or like musicians or graphic artists to with an equally kind of permissionless decentralized way actually start working for a DAO or plug into a DAO. And what people don't realize yet is that Urbit is that. When you are creating on Urbit, if you make an Urbit group or you're just active in a group and you're adding value to the network, you are more or less working. You are permissionlessly joining a DAO. You are working for a DAO. And maybe you're going to buy some address space or someone's going to give you some address space. But because address space can be distributed and it can be given to people as rewards for making, valuable content, it is basically, I think, the first like serious high value software protocol DAO that writers and thinkers and creators can plug into in a non-trivial way. And to me, that's like one of the big big kind of dark horse like values and benefits and features of Urbit that people like don't even come close to understanding yet.
Yeah, it'll be great to see that grow. Shout out Urbit Media. You know, they're trying to kind of do a little Urbit Media DAO, not little.
Yeah,
big,
totally.
I don't know. I don't know. It'll be. I don't know what's gonna happen.
So when you decide you're going to do the Mars review of books, there's a lot that goes into it. One of the things you have to decide is a kind of whole vision of what types of books you want to review, what types of tone you're looking for. You know, obviously you can't program this stuff in advance, but every, you know, great magazine or great publication of this type has some kind of vision in mind, some kind of founding vision. So tell us a little bit about what that is in your mind, in terms of content, in terms of style. Like I look at the title, I look at the cover, for instance, and it's got a very kind of crypto punk, like cyberpunk kind of vibe. It's got a gun on the cover, pretty bold. You know, it's a little aggressive. It's got dark colors, so I'm getting a kind of, you know, cypherpunk, cyberpunk, somewhat aggressive, somewhat, you know, even cold, I would dare say.
Cold.
Technological.
That's interesting.
You know, aggressive, like an aggressive technological kind of style. So, but I'm just giving you off the cuff what I'm seeing. What how do you see it, and how did you conceive of it?
Let's see. Well, from the look, I wanted it to look different from...
Looks awesome.
Yeah, what you'd find elsewhere. Or I wanted it to signify that this is something new and that we're looking at new types of things. And Isabel just did a fantastic job bringing that to life.
Shout out to Isabel in Austin. She's in the Austin crew.
We're reviewing things that wouldn't get reviewed in the legacy media.
So, like, the books you mean?
That's
like,
one thing. That's one thing. So, you know.
So, how do you pick the books? Like, what are you looking at? What are your criteria for, I'm going to send this out to a reviewer?
Well, you know, I like mixing things together that don't really go together.
Okay.
So, I wanted to get people from the New York world engaging with, like, weirdo online world.
I see. Okay.
And maybe people from online world engaging with what might be some of the best stuff that's rising to the top of the legacy system.
Right on.
I mean, so that was part of my thesis from the beginning. I think, you know, one of the problems with magazines these days is that the way it used to be when you're reviewing books, like that's the only stuff to review. Mm-hmm. What the publishing houses publish, that's the only content there is. That was true until like 20 years ago. That's not true at all anymore.
Right.
Like the big 5 publishing houses don't dictate what's worth reading. Right. So we have a review of Control Creep in here, who's a pseudonymous author, and the review's fantastic, and the book is fantastic. You know, no legacy publication.
Is that an independently published book?
Yeah, that's an independently published book.
Oh, which one is that? What's it called?
What's the title of the...
Just curious. Or the review.
The first great cyborg author, or the first great work of cyborg literature.
Okay, fascinating. So I see. So you're basically reviewing like internet content that usually would not qualify.
Well, it was self-published as a print book.
Okay, but I mean, it's like unsanctioned. It's like that would not qualify for a review in most book reviews.
No, but there's no real reason why not. Right. It's just, you know, as a matter of habit. No, of course we don't publish something that any Joe Schmo just like prints out with Amazon. I see. Why would we do that?
And you see there an opportunity because there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out now in that type of format. Fascinating, yeah.
And I think, you know, what we were talking about with what has maybe led some magazines downhill, maybe that's happened with publishers too, where they're focusing maybe a little bit on the wrong stuff. And so they're all publishing the same shit that looks the same,
right?
You know? And maybe the quality control isn't there,
right? And how do you think about writers on Urbit? Like, do you think Urbit will increasingly be like the source of new writers, the source of new content? Like, does the ecosystem have to do things to generate that more? Do you think about that? Like, or is
in general or for the magazine?
Well, because at the moment, I think what you're doing is you're putting content on Urbit, but you're also putting it on the internet. Yeah. And obviously it's a beautiful print magazine as well. You know, I've noticed there are more and more people, it seems, writing
Yes.
on Urbit. Like
Yeah.
that's the place where they do their writing.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you think about that. Do you see that growing?
Yeah.
Or do you think that I sometimes wonder if there are like, what what do you think the future of that looks like? You have tools coming out like the Studio blog, which I think you're using, the Studio app on Urbit that you use to publish the Mars review. So there are kind of more and more tools and utilities for writers on Urbit, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess in a way what I'm asking is, in a way, is this a bet on like Urbit becoming more of an epicenter of original content?
Well, I mean, 3 of the authors are in here, just people I know from what I've seen them say and do on Urbit.
Right.
So
like Neil,
and Phil, Gailbach, and Reed.
Sitful Hatred. Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, that's a very that's a very non-programmatic answer. But just like, I think Urbit has become an epicenter for quality people. So like, it works for producing, content in that way. Whereas I'm like, I wouldn't like look for quality people like on Discord.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. And I guess I'm curious if you have you learned anything interesting in putting this together and getting the launch together?
Yeah.
Like for people who want to build on Urbit, like build culture and content on Urbit and business, like small businesses on Urbit, like any interesting kind of observations or insights or experiences that you could share for people thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I've been heads down, like doing the print mag for the past like couple months. So
Sure.
I've learned a lot about like print production. As for how this will shake out on Urbit, that's a little bit TBD.
Sure.
We just did but I like doing AMAs and stuff in a private Urbit group.
Yeah.
I learned that if my group bans comments, which it does, I should make that public so that comments don't try to get in and bounce and not know what's going on. But I think like having a private group that's a small community where you can like do random shit. We're going to do a reading group. Varun, who you met earlier, he's going to lead a reading group on Spinoza's Ethics.
Well, nice.
That's going to be in my group.
Based.
At Bid Ballet. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that part I still have a lot to learn probably in terms of like how to make this an Urbit business.
Yeah, well, I think that's fair because the tooling is still shaking out, and I think I don't want to like overhype shit, but I think the next like 1 year / 2 years is going to be insane when it comes to. I think the game is going to change, honestly, just in terms of tools that come out.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you know Trent from Holium. But
we met, but I don't know him well.
Well, I see him kind of a lot because I do the podcast now out of the shared offices.
Place
yeah.
Where,
And like he shows me, and he works hard, man. He ships it. He's in there every day. He works hard. And they just ship like the ballot app.
Yeah.
Which is just their first little app for like DAO tooling. And I don't know, man. And he shows me mock-ups for like what's coming, and I'm like, dude, I feel like this year it's going to be big, or at the very least, like this year or next year. I think basically there are going to be things you can do as groups on Urbit that you just can't do anywhere else. Yeah. And it's going to boggle people's minds in terms of like what a group can do, what it means to be like a publishing collective or, a collective of writers or whatever. I think in other words, what I'm saying is I think like your modesty around like, I don't really know, we'll wait and see is the right answer. Yeah. Because I think stuff is coming down the pike.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I'm very here for like Urbit word processing. Like just the task of like getting people's pieces electronically is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like some people only use Google Docs. Some people like, you just put it in Markdown and put it on GitHub. Yeah. And then you got to finalize it for print. And then you got to go back and take those finalized files and like reformat them for publication on Urbit.
Right.
Like there's got to be a better way.
Definitely. There's so much low hanging fruit. There's so much basic stuff. Yeah, definitely. And so, okay, great. And so maybe tell us a little bit about like what does the future hold? Like how, I suspect you're looking for writers, you're looking for book reviewers.
For sure.
You probably have a bias towards people with Urbit pad piece.
Yeah, I have a bias towards, like anybody else, I have a bias towards people I know and people I've seen around.
Right.
But yeah, definitely like having an Urbit ship, having a planet or above is a very positive sign. Like if I'm interacting with
And
somebody.
if you were to kind of express a call for submissions, like how would you articulate it exactly? Like what kinds of stuff are you
this
looking
always
for?
annoyed the shit out of me from old publications, but the best way to know what I'm looking for is to read issue one.
Right.
I'm looking for intelligent, elegant writing about important new subjects.
Yeah.
Mostly important new books, but it doesn't have to be a book. We did something on angelicism, who you've also written about, which is just a Substack.
Sure.
We did a few pieces that aren't pegged to books. I always like to at least peg it to something new that comes out, because then at least the person who wrote that will read it, their publicist will read it, their agent will read it, their editor will read it. You got 4. You got a minimum of 4.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's really smart what you're doing, because there's clearly a big gap between the types of content that's coming out that's really interesting and sophisticated and highly deserving of thoughtful reviewing.
Yeah.
And what like establishment prestige book reviews will even consider like eligible types of content, like we were talking about before, like with a Substack is not seen as worthy of a proper book review, or an independently published book is not seen as worthy of a proper book review. And so just basically staking your claim and saying we're just going to treat that content as equally worthy of sophisticated book,
and not all
book
of
reviews.
it, obviously.
It's a great opportunity. Of course, not all of it.
Yeah,
Of course. But it's a really smart move, and it's a big opportunity. And I think that when you put it that way, it makes a lot of sense to me, like what you're trying to do. And it sounds really smart and sounds awesome.
Yo, thanks, man.
Yeah, man. I only got my hands on this today, so
unfortunately, this is hot off the press.
Unfortunately,
we just got this down in a van from upstate New York.
Hell yeah. So
down into the city.
Unfortunately, I can't speak to any of the pieces, although I'm probably going to read them tonight and tomorrow morning, so I can talk to people like Neil. I got to get Neil in here.
Oh yeah,
he's like a mad genius. He's very interesting.
Neil's fantastic.
Oh, before I let you go, though, I have to ask you about. For a long time, you were working on a history of Urbit.
Yes.
Yeah. Give us the update on that.
That took a backseat to this project, but
But in 5 minutes, recapitulate the entire history of Urbit for us.
Absolutely.
You wrote many chapters. I mean, it's like a significantly advanced.
Yeah, I think 10 now.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going with your suggestion. I'm just going to call it the Machine War. Or Ab Urbit Condita, maybe. Maybe I'll keep that.
You had this like Latin name, and I think I said at some point like I think Machine War is cooler.
I think you're right. You're right.
Tell us like what are some of the standout memories from that project, or insights or lessons about Urbit's history that people don't know about that are worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was surprised to just find how serious and committed and like idealistic Urbit is as a project, and just how counter to the prevailing winds it is. Mm-hmm. That was like the main takeaway I had from like, learning a lot about Urbit and the people behind it and the history. It's like people aren't fucking around. Like
it's like deeply structurally contrarian to like a really almost antisocial degree.
Yeah, you might put it that way. Yeah, but just like people are really thinking seriously about like, what should the computing experience be?
Were there particular anecdotes or particular like little stories that might interest people on that front?
Oh, hi.
It's a guy. Do you need us there? It's a guy. I like that. I hope there's a lot of this. I think it makes
there will
content.
Be a lot of
I think
this.
It makes content interesting.
Yeah.
Like when people are coming in and out. So
that was like Howard Stern's great invention, right? It's like when there's an interruption, that becomes part of the show.
Yeah, exactly. So I very much encourage this. You can tell people that. But
okay, everybody bother Justin.
Yeah. Come on and barge in. But yeah. So were there particular anecdotes on this like contrarian like founding attitude of Urbit?
Well, in one of the early chapters, I recount sort of Curtis's early entry of the Urbit project to a symposium, and
oh right, that's one of the early chapters. I think I read that. It's an interesting,
and it got a funny
story.
Response, but it's like in a way it's emblematic because the people who received this project were so triggered, but also like they were just misunderstanding things. Like they weren't actually being insulted, I don't think.
Right.
They felt that
because
way.
what did they say, or what was the gist of it?
I mean, I think the line was like, "Urbit is functional programming for stupid people like you." But the point of that line was just to be like it needs to be something that can work for can be like simple,
Right.
right? To
Right.
be as simple as possible.
Right.
It's not like you, reader, are stupid.
Wasn't it, if I recall from your chapter, doesn't he, in his paper or his submission to this conference, I think it was in Tokyo or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's where I think he first talks about the Martian reference and the concept of what would it look like if in the far future Martians like landed on Earth and decided to like rewrite all of software to make it as like simple as possible. But he actually uses that language like in this technical paper or something like that. I forget.
Yeah.
Like in the proposal.
That was the first post. More on Lab, which I think was the first public post about Urbit.
Okay.
And that was a blog. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So. Yeah, I just wonder if there's anything else that bears repeating for or deep lore. Like, what kind of deep lore do you have?
What's been posted publicly? There's a good deal of stuff about Urbit, but there's also a good deal of stuff about like the history of computing before Urbit.
Right.
Like I was trying to write a holistic history of computing.
Right.
From an Urbit-centric standpoint. So there's lots of wild stuff there, just about these crazy characters like John von Neumann, who kind of invented the modern computer, about Pascal.
Right.
The idea of the computer has been around for a long time.
Sure.
And the thing that writing this book showed me was that we still kind of don't know what like a computer is. And I think that's something Urbit people think about deeply that maybe other tech people don't think about quite as much, is the wherefore,
And what is the wherefore?
I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, obviously, like it's a good calculating machine, but like Leibniz was like trying to use it to like discover the truth about God and man and eternity.
Right. I think we're going to do it.
It seems possible. Yeah. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. Well, I hope you finish that book.
Yes. Thank you.
And get it published.
I shall.
Maybe what will happen is the Mars review of books will become so big and powerful that you'll basically then you'll launch your own book through it, basically.
I'd like to do books. Do print books. Yeah.
Oh, so that's a later ambition. Do books.
Yeah. It's an ambition. I need more people.
Nice, dude. Well, where can people subscribe? I think it's live now, right? So people can get this mailed to them on a regular basis.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes. That's all. It's all going to be. By the time this goes out, it'll all be on marsreview.org.
Nice.
You can come to my Urbit group, bidbell/a.
I'll put links in the show notes.
If you have a planet.
Yeah. I'll put links in all the show notes, and if you need a planet, I'll give you one for free. I'll put a link to that in the show notes also.
And you can buy a copy on marsreview.org if you want the print copy. If we don't sell out this weekend, okay. I don't know what happens.
I suspect you will. How many copies do you have here?
Here we have 500.
What? There's more after that?
There's potentially.
Those are good numbers. You're expecting big numbers.
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
Nice, dude. Well, thanks for jumping on here with me. This is fun to catch up with you and hear about what the thinking that's gone behind this. It's come out amazing. I'm super pumped on this.
Thank you.
I'm genuinely eager to sit down and read every word of it, because I was just flipping through it and it seems very clear pretty quickly. It's like, whoa, you just don't get this vibe anywhere. Like
it's something new.
This like mix of crypto anarchy and like Neil Davis's analyses of like nuclear fusion, and then like you flip the page and it's like your playwright buddies talking about like the professional managerial class. It's like it's something else. So I'm very intrigued to go deep on it.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Noah. All right, dude. I think that's a wrap.
All right.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Yes, sir. Good stuff, man.